First of all, I'd like to say welcome. This candidate forum is presented by Northern Lights Indivisible. We are a progressive action group that promotes free and fair elections and to promote educated voters. We also vehemently oppose the current administration and his authoritarian practices. Our group is actively protesting against his regime and trying to get progressive candidates in so that we can slowly take over the administration and all the offices in the country. Northern Lights Indivisible is a nonprofit community action group. It's costly to present community forums. If you find value in tonight's candidate forum, please consider making an addition to finance similar programs in the future. Housekeeping. Restrooms are right out the back door and to the right, and there are coffee and cookies in the back. Help yourself. Because you are all attentive voters, I suspect you're all registered to vote. If you've moved or changed your name, you need to update your registration. If your child or neighbor is not registered, please pick up a voter registration packet on one of the tables back there. I see there's also some scattered around these tables. We will be having our third National No Kings Rally on Saturday, March 28th, from noon to 2. It's on Lincoln Street in the corner of Eisenhower Parkway. It's in front of the old Shopco. The last No Kings event in October had over 7.5 million people nationally, and Rhinelander had over 1,000. We hope you'll come down and join us. It's always a pretty good time, and being with like-minded people is just exhilarating. You'll come away feeling the best you've felt in a long time. Spring elections are right around the corner. They're held on Tuesday, April 7th, and on the ballot is our school board, our county board, our mayor, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court. There is a school board meeting candidate tomorrow from 6 to 7:30 at Rhinelander High School. It's hosted by the League of Women Voters and Rhinelander High School students. Also, we have some candidate yard signs back there, and the more, pick them up and put them in your yard. Time's a wasting. The election is April 7th. And if you'd please turn off the ringers on your phone, that would be awesome. We are taping this, and it's always nicer if we don't have a lot of weird noises going on. Okay, each candidate is going, you have a candidate scorecard in front of you. Does everyone have one? Please use it to record your observations during the program and take it with you when you go home. If you really like a candidate, I encourage you to volunteer your time to campaign for the candidate and put a sign in your yard. Make sure you talk to the candidates so that they know that you'll be helping them. Thank you to our two people who are photographing and videographing this program, Amanda Anderson of Amanda Anderson Studios and Andrew Egan of Inspire Digital Studios. Okay, the ground rules. To ensure fairness and clarity, each candidate will receive equal time. Candidates will have 3 minutes to answer each question. A timer will be used. When applicable, candidates will begin with a yes or no answer, and then any kind of explanation they want to give. Applause should be held until the end of the forum, so we can get in as many questions as possible. Our goal is clarity, specificity, and respect. If we have applause between things, we won't be able to get in 20 questions. And I figured we can get 20 questions in if we're cooking, really cooking. Each question will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. There will be 2 candidates answering each question. They will each have 3 minutes. Each candidate will have 3 minutes at the end of the program. We will be taking written questions from the audience. You should have index cards in front of you and something to write with. When you have a question, please write it on the card and pass it to the outside of the row where we'll collect those. We are grateful to welcome Chris Armstrong, Fred Clark, and Ginger Murray to our forum tonight. Thank you all for being here. Why don't you come on up, folks? Okay, who would like to begin on the introductions? Yeah, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. My husband's going to give me a 30-second warning. Hi, I am Ginger Murray. I am running for Congress. I grew up in the Northwoods. I was born to these lovely parents, my mom and my dad, in Eau Claire. They then moved to Rhinelander, where I went to kindergarten. While Dad was working at the paper mill and bartending at the Claridge, Mom worked at Cirilli's, Pizza Hut, and the post office. Hard workers. That's where I get my work ethic from. We then moved when Dad took a job for the federal government at the Blackwell Job Corps Center, where I went to school in Wabeno. Thank you, Forest County, Wabeno folks. An amazing school. I was one of 36 in my class, a class where teachers love their job and were fully invested in students. I absolutely gained and benefited immensely from that education. I then got involved in this thing called mock trial, where I ended up meeting Judge Kinney as my judge, and he told me I had something and I should go to law school. Fast forward, I went to UW-Madison, got my degree in behavioral science and law, went to Jackson, Mississippi for law school, worked on capital murder defense cases, and came back to Forest County. I was appointed as the Forest County Family Court Commissioner, the Oneida County Family Court Commissioner. I was appointed and reelected as the City Attorney of Crandon, hired as the Town Attorney of Crandon, and had a private practice. I work at this speed all the time. Then I got married, we had 2 kids, and we had to settle down. My husband needed to get to a 4-year college after finishing up at Nicolay Tech School, so he finished up his degree to become a teacher. I lived down in Madison at the time, but I've always remained connected to the Northwoods. I have an office in Crandon. My 30 years of advocacy as a lawyer, I'd like to offer to you as your advocate in Washington, D.C.
Okay, you can sit down, and we'll let Chris come up and give a brief introduction.
All right. Well, I'm going to time myself. Got it right there. So Chris Armstrong, I'm from New Richmond, Wisconsin. Have my own IT business for the past 30 plus years. The reason I'm running is I am enraged at what is going on in this country every single freaking day, and compounded yet again by another horrendous action by this illegitimate anti-American administration on Saturday. As you guys know, it's not going to get better with these folks. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. They are going to get more desperate and more dangerous. But what I am enthused by is a year ago, I started protesting by myself in downtown New Richmond because I just did not know what to do, and I had to do something or I was going to break something in my house. So I got out there, made up a sign, Trump, corrupt, criminal, traitor, all sorts of things. It wasn't vulgar. On the other side, deport Musk, impeach Trump, and got a pretty positive response. And then after the Susan Crawford election, I got involved, or before it, I got involved in canvassing. Decided I wasn't going to sit on my butt, cross my fingers, and hope all the hard work that everyone else did was going to, do what it took to get the job done. Ended up starting New Richmond Indivisible. Our first protest, hands off, on April 5th. 95 people signed up, 250 people showed up. So when I hear you guys had 700 here, I'm like, we got to up our game in New Richmond big time. But one of the reasons I'm doing this is because, again, I'm a grandfather for the first time, And I think about a time in 10, 11, 12 years when my grandson's going to look at me and say, hey, Grandpa, I heard things were pretty freaking crazy back in the day. What did you do? And if I can't look him in the eye and say, I did everything within my power to try to make this a better place for you, for your siblings, your parents, our friends and families, and our community, I just don't know what I would do. So the big thing, I don't know if anyone recognizes this, and whose it is. I mean, it's mine. This is the U.S. Constitution, and I am here to tell you we are taking our country back to make sure that this document, which requires all of our hard work every single day in order for us to get things back online.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I would very much like to go and represent you all in Washington next year. My name's Fred Clark. I'm a candidate for Congress. And there aren't many institutions in this country right now that have a lower approval rating than our U.S. Congress. And like all of you, I've watched the last year plus as every single time this Congress had the opportunity to stand up, to do its job under the Constitution, to pass laws that represent the interests of the people, that represent the moral standing and the moral grounding that this country should operate from, they failed. And the cowardice and the lack of independence that so many of our members of Congress have exhibited in the last year and a half is worthy of all of our just deep disappointment. So I made a decision to run, not because I'm running against this president, of which I deeply oppose the policies of this administration, but because I want to see a Congress that actually stands up and do its job. You know, it's an amazing amount of work to run for office. And it's astonishing to think that somebody would go through that and then go to Washington and sign their independence away to this administration in almost every respect. I want to see a U.S. government that represents all of us, that's fair, that's equitable, and that's moral. And we have a long way to go to do that, but the road to that pathway is a Democratic majority in Washington next year. I'm a 36-year Wisconsin resident. During most of that time, I've worked as a forester and resource manager. I'm also a former state legislator. I served 3 terms in the Wisconsin State Assembly, and this is my 5th election campaign. And what I'm bringing to this is the experience of knowing how to run a winning campaign in a very large district, and having a very strong sense of public service from my experience as a state representative. I want to bring that to all of you in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we start taking questions, I remind you, please don't clap after the questions. I calculated that if we don't do that, we can have 20 questions. If we applause, we're not going to get there. So let's try to get as many questions in as we can. Okay, the first question is for Fred and Ginger. The topic is foreign policy. Do you support the current military action in Iran? Would you vote to formally declare war if you were in Congress right now?
Thank you. This is a tough topic. It lays heavy on everyone. I do not approve of us being in Iran at this time. I, however, respect the military who are been called and doing the job that they've been told they must do. I brought the Constitution today. There are enough for every one of you to get one at the back table. This tells us that only an act of Congress can legally and constitutionally engage our military in a war. What President Trump would like you to believe is that he has the authority under the War Power Act of 1973. He does not. He would have to demonstrate that there was an imminent danger to our country. There was not. I do not believe we need to be there at this time. He certainly doesn't have the right to be there without the support of Congress. If I was at the table, I would be doing the work that's being done right now to gather the votes to stop the president from taking these unilateral actions that are unconstitutional and are not sanctioned by Congress. Don't clap. Don't you? I would appreciate it, but don't.
Thank you, Ginger. Yeah, our U.S. military is an incredible resource, and the training and the professionalism and the courage that our members of the military exhibit every time they go into action on behalf of the U.S. is something that we should all feel proud of. And the lesson that we fail to learn time and again is that military action is almost never successful without a diplomatic strategy and an intelligence strategy and a global international relations strategy to support long-term outcomes. And we don't have that. What we've learned so far is that this president and this administration, they're really good at smashing things. They smashed USAID. They smashed so many of our federal programs. He smashed the east wing of the White House. And now they've smashed Caracas, and they're trying to smash Tehran. And what's true about every one of those circumstances is that there is no plan for what comes next. And so, God love our military. We can all think about the sacrifice. We've already lost 6 members of the military in the last 4 days. But what's absolutely clear right now is that this administration has not thought through step B, step C, step D, and we are risking a wider Mideast war. And we're already, the gas prices that you saw at the gas stations on the way here tonight were already significantly higher because of this. So this is going to go down as another failure. Congress needs to act right now to reassume war powers and pass that war powers resolution. No more fundamental responsibility than that right now.
The next question is for Fred and Chris. Accessibility. As you are probably aware, Tom Tiffany has not held a town hall in over a year. Will you commit to holding at least 4 in-person town halls per year in northern Wisconsin counties? Fred first?
Oh, me first?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
You've got the plan.
Yes, I love town halls. I'm holding town halls right now. I'm holding a town hall in Wausau tomorrow night. I'm holding a town hall in Hudson on Thursday night. I'll hold a town hall in every county in this district every year as a baseline commitment to represent people. You're right, Tom Tiffany, he doesn't do that. And I know him. I served with him in the state assembly. I've watched Tom work. When he introduced his bill to make the Apostle Islands a national park, I called him. And I said, Tom, why don't you come to Bayfield and take credit for this great idea? Guess what? Scheduling issues. Can't do it. So that's our representative for the last year. People of northern Wisconsin deserve way better than that. And I intend to provide it, and I am quite certain that both of you would as well.
Yep, and I had the privilege of meeting Tom at a town hall that he did in New Richmond, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. He was on the Fox News show, Biden Crime Family Extravaganza. And, I think one of the great things I'd like to think we'd all agree is this is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I live in the western area, so it takes 3.5 hours to get here. But it's a heck of a drive, as long as you miss the deer. Absolutely. I mean, and having never served in any office before, this is my first time running for any office. The thing that really gives me a lot of gratification is coming out and talking to people and meeting people. And, in fact, my brother said, when I announced it to him that what I was going to do, he said, Chris, maybe you're not going to win. Of course, I'm like, well, thanks, dude. But, you're going to meet a lot of great people, and you're going to see a lot of great things across the district. So, being in Washington to get the job done is one part of the responsibility, but, being here, because, I will be nothing, I'll just be a body in a chair in Washington, D.C. if the people in my district are not behind me. So again, continually connecting with people, hearing what people's problems are, seeing what the opportunities are, I think is, absolutely key. I mean, I think the job is called, representative, right? Not warm body in chair. So I think it's really important that you should expect that. And again, 16 years, we've not had that really from Sean Duffy or Tom Tiffany for that matter.
Boy, it's hard not to clap.
I know.
We have several people that are standing in the back. If you have a chair that's open next to you, can you raise your hand so somebody can sit down? There are 2 seats available up in front right here, so you can sit together. Okay. The next question is on healthcare, and it goes to Chris and Ginger. Families here struggle to find addiction and mental health treatment. Will you push for permanent rural health funding instead of short-term pilot programs? And Chris is the first to answer.
Absolutely. I mean, as you guys know, we are the most prosperous, wealthiest country in the history of the world, and there's just no freaking excuse that we can't have good health care. I mean, so Medicare for all, universal health care, I'm not sure which approach is best, but the whole point is we should not in the United States fear of dying, of being, going into bankruptcy, just being able to live. It seems like the Republican policy is that you have to work in order to get health care. I think you need to be healthy and able to work if that's the phase in your life that you're in. It's something that we deserve as a human right. And the challenge that we've got here in the 7th district is with the distributed population. This is the most rural district in all of Wisconsin, as I'm sure if you didn't know it, not hard to guess. And the kind of investments that are needed to provide the kind of facilities and professionals that are needed here require subsidization from the federal government. I mean, it's not easy to attract someone who just spent 8 to 12 years in medical school to come up here and practice when the cost of and housing is a challenge, the availability of internet, having the lifestyle that you want, and being able to have a salary that you can pay off your your loan. So I think there's definitely a lot of creative things that we can do in the federal government to try to make investments here so that people can live prosperous, healthy lives.
I think I'm next.
You are next.
The answer is yes. I absolutely believe that everybody in the United States deserves affordable access to quality health care. That includes mental health care, that includes health care for AODA issues. I am fully aware of what it's like when you don't have health insurance. When I was a graduate from law school, all those jobs I told you about were all part-time. And so what happens when you work part-time? No benefits. What happens when you work at Walmart? You work 39 hours. Why? No benefits. So it is high time for everybody in the United States to have affordable access to quality health care. I know that there are proposals for Medicare for all, Medicare for all, or the one option. When I buy a car, I like to go to the car lot knowing I need a car and open-minded about what car will suit me best. I know it's important to understand the needs of the people, understand the resources, and understand the costs before you make the decision. As a lawyer, I know to identify the issues, find out the facts, ask the experts, and make the decision that's best for everyone. I absolutely support affordable access to quality health care for everyone in the Northwoods. And let me add, our Indigenous friends are doing an amazing job at making health care a priority, and we could learn from them.
I know it's killing you, isn't it? Okay, the next question is to Fred and Ginger. And the question is on Social Security. Will you oppose any plan that cuts Social Security benefits or raises the retirement age?
I'll take the mic.
Let's see, I have to figure out. Fred goes
Oh,
first.
Fred goes first this time.
Yeah, strongly. Our Social Security system is projected to go insolvent sometime in the 2030s. That number actually keeps getting bumped back. and there's no reason for it. This is an eminently solvable problem. This is a problem Congress has known about for years. And what we need to do is, first of all, raise the income limit above which we're capturing Social Security taxes. And then we need a tax system that's fair and that has the wealthiest people in our society paying their fair share of the tax burden. Because the Social Security Trust Fund is about 85% funded right now by the wages that all of us contribute when we're paid. But it's that remaining gap that we're going to hit the wall on. We can't do it by reducing benefits. The dignity and the right to a dignified retirement for Americans is something that our parents and our grandparents have enjoyed. Every one of us and our children and their grandchildren deserve that as well. This is a solvable problem. There's no reason in the world that we should make it to bear that cost on the backs of the people who need the support the most.
Yes. Listen, my mom's sitting right here, and she worked for Social Security for like 30 years, and so I've grown up hearing Social Security, Social Security. This does not need to go bankrupt. I think the concise words you're looking for, scrap the cap. I had the honor and pleasure and fortune of earning a bonus one year at a larger law firm that allowed me to get a check that didn't take out Social Security. And I was miffed and pleasantly that I had more money than I expected. And I asked why. I didn't realize there was a cap on Social Security as a younger lawyer. And I'm like, everybody should be paying Social Security. Everybody here who's worked, already paid, you deserve to get it when it's your time. And Congress owes that to you. They took your money when you were earning it. You deserve to get it when it's your turn. I absolutely will do everything I can to support folks getting that, every bit that they're supposed to, hopefully without making any changes to the age. That would be my goal. The end. Concise.
Okay, the next question is on climate, and it goes to Fred and Chris. Should the federal government prioritize fossil fuel production, renewable energy expansion, or a mix? What specific energy legislation would you back?
Well, I think we can see again with this, war in Iran, right? The price of oil and accessibility of oil is incredibly volatile. It is very dirty, not just environmentally, but politically. There's only so much of this stuff. We need to make serious investments in renewable energy. Again, as many of you guys may know, solar energy is the cheapest, quickest way to ramp up new megawatts. Wind is doing pretty good as well. There's only so much oil on this planet. And, I think it's particularly perhaps, all of you guys, it's pretty tough to live up here without a vehicle, right? And, going to the gas station and filling up the gas tank to just get from here to there. I wish there were more options, but, for goodness sakes, we've done some pretty amazing things with technology over the course, of as being humans, not just in the United States. And I think we really need to, make, some investments, similar to the Apollo program to try to solve this kind of problem. So, just imagine what it would be like to just not have to worry about where energy came from and drilling it out of the earth, all of the consequences of that. I think there's an opportunity, not knowing quite honestly the details of the supply chain, but there good manufacturing jobs for people that want to pursue that type of career and creating green energy. Wouldn't it be cool if we could build solar panels, wind turbines in the 7th district, install them in the 7th district, and be independent? Because I heard that the Farmers Bureau talk I went to a couple months ago that, unsurprisingly, Wisconsin imports, I think, almost 85% of all of the energy that it consumes. So we are incredibly dependent on that. And so anything we can do to make an investment to decouple ourselves from those dependencies, I think would be fantastic.
Thanks, Chris. This is really a perfect example of the corrupting influence of money in politics, that the oil lobby has steered this administration to basically wipe away one of the most signature achievements of the Biden administration in the last administration, and that is the incredible investments we are making in renewable energy and energy conservation and in preparing America for a climate future that we know will be uncertain, we know will include more climate catastrophes, and where we have the best opportunity we'll ever have to change over our energy sources to renewables, which, as Chris said, are cheaper and more reliable and will benefit us in so many ways. But because of the wealth of the oil industry lobby, a lot of that has gone out the window. And the result of that is going to be climate change impacts that are affecting all of us for years to come. So not only do we need a federal government to move back toward the transition away from fossil fuels, but we need to continue to invest in preparing for a more uncertain climate future. That priority gets lost in the stew of fighting about all the other things we're fighting about right now, but we can't afford to lose sight of that.
Hot potato. Okay, the next question is for Ginger and Chris. It's on civil rights. Recent immigration enforcement actions have raised concerns in Wisconsin communities. Do you support stronger oversight of ICE to protect civil rights? And the first question is for Ginger. Oversight,
Dismantle. I believe that we need to control our borders and we need to make sure that folks who want to be here have an access to be here legally. I have protested. I had the opportunity, by coincidence actually, to be in Minnesota the day that Alex Preddy was murdered. I was there across the street from the Whipple building. I had the opportunity to talk to the people who were witnessing what was happening in Minnesota. I spoke to protesters. I spoke to the police officers. I spoke to the press. It was incredible what neighbors were doing to protect their neighbors, getting groceries for people who were afraid to leave their house, letting family members know where the car was left when their family member was plucked out of it and taken to the detainment center. It is not acceptable that we currently have agents of our United States government who are not honoring our Fourth Amendment freedom from unreasonable search and seizures and are using unlawful force to murder citizens who are simply exercising their First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, and for the press, the freedom of press. I brought with me the red cards, on one side that's in English and the other side is in Spanish, on the things that people need to say if they're confronted by ICE. I brought some whistles. I came to the training. I'm on the signal. I am prepared to do everything I can to stop this assault on citizens who are simply exercising their constitutional rights and are being harassed and unconstitutionally violated by agents of this administration.
I thought that was off.
Yeah. So I think ICE, as it is constituted, needs to go away. It needs to be melted down to slag. It is irredeemable. You may know that the agents, the CBP agents that executed Alex Preddy, were 8 and 12-year veterans of the force. This is not a training issue, although they certainly are training issues. This is a cultural issue. CBP officers have a higher rate of committing crimes than normal American citizens, certainly far greater than immigrants. Where I live in St. Croix County, it takes me 20 minutes to get to Stillwater, 30 minutes to get to St. Paul. So ICE has been present in New Richmond, Hudson, and Baldwin in particular, where there's a lot of dairy farms and manufacturing facilities. Like Ginger, I went to the first protest where there were 100,000 people in the streets when it was 12 degrees below zero. And of course, for all of us, it was like, this is no big deal. All you got to do is dress like you're ice fishing, which we kind of were, that you kind of think about it. But, with this agency regularly violating people's First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, 10th, and 14th Amendment rights, the package that the Democrats have about funding DHS is well intended, but it's not this hard, people. They just need to follow the freaking law. They are a lawless agency. Kristi Noem needs to be impeached, removed from office, and held, in contempt for her crimes, in addition to all of the officers. And as you may know, there are county attorneys in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area that are asking for evidence from citizen observers, because every one of these people need to be held full accountable for the crimes that they've committed.
The next question is for Ginger and Fred, and it's on government. Will you commit to never voting to shut down the federal government over a political dispute? And the first person answer is Ginger.
Thank you. My instinct is yes. Or wait, it's like that's a double negative. I would not want to shut down our government because there's a dispute. I am an attorney. I represent people, normal, average, ordinary, everyday people in their family actions. I look out for the best interest of children. When I was a presiding official, I was looking out for the best interest of children. When you have a reputation for doing what's right and getting results, you can get people to the table to get agreements instead of fighting and litigating or acting like babies. Because sometimes our politicians, that's what they do. They Robin Voss in our state, when he didn't like it, he just shut the thing down and went home for the day or went to a fundraiser. The folks who are elected are on your dollar. They need to be working. They need to be figuring out how to get results. They need to be figuring out how to take care of the people who put them in office. And you can't do that when the government is shut down. We should not be shutting down. The end.
I appreciate your sentiment, Ginger. I don't think any policymaker should go to Washington and throw away their ability to make that decision. So look back to late in 2025, when the Democrats did not vote to support the funding that resulted in government shutting down. At that point, you know what they had? They had the leverage to have forced the Republicans to put the Affordable Care Act tax credits back in force. They gave it away. Okay, so that's an example of a principled decision that was one of the very few points where Democrats in the minority, had leverage, and they blew it. So we have some Democrats right now that are holding out on funding for Department of Homeland Security. They're, as Chris said, they're holding out for a set of reforms in our immigration enforcement that may not be as much as all of us wanted, but they're significant reforms nonetheless, and they need to hold the line. So none of us want to see government shut down. None of us want to see federal employees sitting at home or working and not getting paid. The folks who run our federal government on our behalf are public servants. They deserve our best treatment. There are times when you have to hold the line. And your political disagreement is somebody else's ability to have health care or dignity in life or some things that may help them live. Those are important priorities that have to be balanced. So sometimes you got to hold the line.
Okay, the next question is to Fred and Chris. It's in regard to broadband. We've heard broadband promises before. If companies take federal money and don't deliver real high-speed service to rural homes, will you support taking that money back? And the first one to answer is Fred.
Yes, I mean, this is where rural electrification was over 100 years ago. But at this point, broadband is a basic quality of life issue. Whether you're trying to run a small business or simply survive in today's information economy, the federal government and the state government need to be working in partnership to assure that every community and every region has access to broadband. And I've been to enough places in the 7th Congressional District where 15 years into this conversation, we still haven't got there. So reforms are needed, but we've got to double down on that commitment.
So I think maybe to clarify the question, I wouldn't take the money away from the fund to help the residents of the district, but if there are contractors or vendors that aren't, delivering on their commitments, then it needs to be taken away from them and reallocated to someone else. Sure sounds like a potential job creation program of some sort, right? It's particularly important to me, it's just a self-serving interest. I'm in the IT field. And one of the benefits that I have, again, I have to work full-time. I'm the primary revenue generator for my company and the sole income provider for my family. So I cannot not work while I campaign. So I know what a lot of people perhaps have experienced for some time, what it's like to have to work 2 jobs at the same time. But I've got one flexibility that a lot of people don't have in trying to, do this endeavor, which is I can work from anywhere in the world if I've got a good cell phone signal or broadband. And fortunately I do over at this cabin. I'm staying over, on the other side of Rhinelander. But, as Fred said, it's essential in today's world. So, and I think the thing we want to be really careful about is if we can't get direct wire, which I think is the best thing to do, but it's really expensive. If you're the last person on the line, the utility has no financial motivation to do it. That's where subsidization is necessary, is we sure as crap don't want to use Starlink from Elon Musk. Again, technologies, it's cool that it works, but he is an evil person putting any money in his pocket, notwithstanding, the consequence of these mega constellations in our beautiful, skies at night. It would be a very, very bad choice. So again, totally need to invest in this type of funding for the future. And again, attract people to this region to build their lives and start new businesses.
The next question is for Chris and Ginger. It's on healthcare. If a small Wisconsin hospital is on the brink of closing, would you vote for emergency federal funding to keep it open, even if it increases spending?
Yes, right? Got to have the facilities. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure there's people out there that know this much better than I, but in order to give birth in the 7th District, I think it's very challenging to find a facility that has an obstetrician to do it. Certain types of procedures, you got to be medvaced, to either Wausau or Minneapolis or Duluth. It's on the one hand, one of the things I think a lot of people like about living here is the isolation, the connection to nature. But that doesn't mean we don't deserve to have 21st century healthcare, and it requires investment to make this happen. Someone has to pay for it. We have enough, the United States, we do not have a money problem in the United States. We have an allocation and priority problem, and there's just no excuse we can't have the best healthcare in the world in the most beautiful part of the country.
The question is, would I support federal funding for an emergency fix? I would support federal funding in cooperation with our leaders in the state to find a long-term fix so that we're not having emergencies. For example, I know in the Northwoods, many of my peers, attorneys, are retiring. I know personally I've been trying to get another lawyer in my Crandon office, and it is perfectly impossible to get folks to move up here. Our state bar took on an initiative They are recruiting from the 2 law schools in Madison and Milwaukee to get folks to rural communities. They're working with law firms to host them, and law students to get them to the Northwoods. When I was at a recent meeting, I was talking to a couple and the wife was in med school, and she couldn't find a doctor who would sponsor her for her residency anywhere in the Northwoods, so they're in a long-term relationship because there's nobody here who will sponsor a student, a med student, who wants to establish herself in the Northwoods. So I don't want us dealing with emergency to emergency to emergency. We need a reform with a plan with our state partners for long-term results. So yes, I would help take care of clinics and hospitals. They are already closing. This isn't a hypothetical. A fix is needed, and I would do what I can to help fix it.
The next question is on accountability, and it goes to Ginger and Fred. Do you support any reforms like the current SAVE Act to protect elections, such as voting rights legislation or campaign finance reform? If so, which specific proposals?
Just briefly on the last question, one really good way to support our rural healthcare system is to make sure that everybody has coverage. And the Affordable Care Act tax credit elimination and $1 trillion out of Medicaid would be one of the best ways to make our rural healthcare systems weaker. So with regard to accountability, I'm strongly opposed to the SAVE Act. That is a problem in search of a solution. And the ID requirements we have here in Wisconsin today are more than adequate to assure that citizens are voting and that we don't have fraud in our elections. We've dealt with that issue. Regarding accountability, we absolutely need to deal with the corrupting influence of money in politics. And things like banning insider stock trading. There's a long list of reforms in Congress that we need to see. We need to see term limits. We need to see prohibitions on the revolving door that allows the legislators to walk right out the door and start lobbying. And we need to counter Citizens United and the rules of the game right now that allow unlimited dark money in politics. And there are strategies to do that we all need to get behind. But if the failure for accountability in Congress right now is one of the reasons that all of us are getting stuck by crappy policies that don't protect consumers, that make life less affordable, and that are hurting everyday Americans across the political spectrum.
My turn? Yep.
I'm sorry, Ginger.
No, we're good. We're good. All right. So Fred went back to another question. This question is about, remind me, because I got distracted by going backwards.
Was accountability?
Thank you. Accountability. The SAVE Act is dead. Thankfully, the Senate has already killed it. And that is absolutely what they should have done, because it impacted married women in extremely high proportions. It was going to cause married women to have to backtrack their paperwork to their birth certificates. Any marriages, divorces, marriages, change of name, it was ridiculous, and it disproportionately impacted women. It also would have impacted people who are adopted, people who can't afford to go get their passport. I'm not going to spend more time on it because thankfully the Senate has already shut that down. As for term limits, I have already signed the pledge that I will support term limits. It is not meant to be a lifelong, I'm just going to say absolute power, absolute corruption. You need to do your job, move on. As it relates to financing, it is gut-wrenching to think about the money that is spent on these campaigns. My family made a decision that we put $100,000 in. That's apparently a drop in the bucket for what this is going to cost. That's ridiculous. I got a phone call that my peer on the other side had $780,000 dropped into his bucket one day by one PAC. Think about that, $780,000. Who's writing that paycheck? That is not what the Democratic Party was about when I grew up. When I met the first politician, John Volk, he was an honest, hardworking farmer, and money didn't buy votes. Good quality candidates earned votes. I am looking to earn your vote, and I am looking for every other elected official to have to earn your vote, not to have PACs that can buy it.
The next question is on forest lands, and it goes to Fred and Chris. Northern counties lose tax base to federal forest land. Will you push to increase federal payments to counties to help relieve local property tax pressure?
Yeah, I think the payment in lieu of taxes payments that our federal forest lands contribute to local communities, we need to look at that and we need to up those rates. But part of what we're seeing there is the squeeze that every local unit of government in a state experiences, largely because our state legislature has been screwing local communities and refusing to put general purpose revenue into the cities and towns and counties that actually do the work here in Wisconsin. But yeah, we need to relook at the federal land contribution and keeping in mind the important benefits that our public lands bring to all of us. The timber production and the jobs that creates is one of the most significant economic sectors here in northern Wisconsin. The recreation opportunities, the fishing, the hunting, the camping, you all know this. We all live up here. So I don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater. I don't want to throw our good friends in the Forest Service under the bus. But we absolutely need to relook at that system, and that's a role for Congress.
So I'll admit, don't know a lot about it, but it makes a lot of sense if, there's certain economic activities that are prohibited because of the national forests that, that decreases the amount of funding that's available, to municipalities. And somehow, again, like we talked about before, there needs to be, subsidization for the people that live up here because there's just not enough revenue for doing certain things. So whether it has to do with roads, broadband, healthcare, I imagine, whatever rates are paid could be increased. That seems to me to be a part of the solution. I found, I was just reading today a real interesting thing that you guys might know about, that Bayfield, I think, is making like $2 million on selling carbon credits that has to do with sequestration of carbon. They sold it to other companies, other countries. So I think there's a lot of different kind of financial models, but it is not my expertise, so I'd certainly defer to those people that know better. But I think we do not want to sacrifice, like Fred was saying, the unique environment that we live in and we enjoy, and just trying to, recapture that money in less responsible ways.
The next question is for Chris and Ginger, and it's on conservation. Logging jobs matter here, so does conservation. Would you support increasing timber harvest levels in the Shawamagon, I had to write that out, Nicolet, or keeping them where they are?
Me? Perfect. So I grew up in Forest County, and my cousins are in Forest County, and do you know what the two jobs are that they have? Loggers and truckers who log. And so just recently I had an opportunity at a fundraiser, not for politicians, but for school children, to talk to them. And they told me that the trees and the forest are as healthy as they've been, and the concern is that the mills are shutting down because we're not using the paper. They don't exactly know, but when I said, do you think it's because we're not using paper, we're writing on our iPads and whatnot, they said that that could very well be the case. I think we have amazing state and national natural resources, many that cannot be replaced, they're irreplaceable. and those should never be sacrificed for the economy. That said, we do have natural resources that can be consumed in a sustainable way to support the economy, including our friends who are loggers and the folks who are trucking those logs out of the woods. So I absolutely support finding ways to use what we have in common, the desire to stay living here in a beautiful Northwoods while still allowing for folks to be able to keep food on the table, a roof over your head, if you happen to be someone who relies on timber harvest for your profession.
So again, I'm going to defer to experts, but I think, certainly there's a long history of, timber and lumber in Wisconsin, but there's also been one in mining as well. As some of you may know, the whole idea of a badger is not actually related to the animal. It's related to people burrowing into the sides of hills, to mine lead by hand. Must have been a pretty interesting job back in the day. But I think what we need to do is we really need to look forward to what are the jobs of the 21st century. So certainly timber and lumber have a dimension in that, but I gotta believe there are gotta be some other opportunities for people to be able to sustain themselves up here. I don't know exactly what they are, to be quite honest. Tourism is a big thing, but that's, the natural resources available through fishing and hunting and stuff like that. But I think we need to be, cognizant, as you guys may well know, living here, that climate change has dramatically impacted our lives up here. I don't know about you guys, but when I was a young kid, it seemed like the snow was this deep, right? Now, it might have been because I was this tall. But here we are. It's what? The first week of March, and it's going to be like 50 or 60 degrees? I mean, which, again, sounds great, but that is not the way it used to be, right? I mean, when, how long are the, snowmobile trails open? I remember when they were like open at the end of October all the way through maybe even April. Can we get even 2 or 3 months of that? When could you go ice fishing? When did you have to pull your shack off the ice? So, getting back to, again, the investment in, alternative renewable energy, I think it's a very complicated thing. There are people that have, invested in that lifestyle, in that industry. I think it's a part of what, is the future of this district, but I think we can expect a lot more diversification and a lot more creativity.
The next question is for Ginger and Fred, and it's on housing. Local workers can't afford to live in some tourist communities. Would you support federal incentives for workforce housing in northern Wisconsin?
Federal support for housing in Wisconsin. So at the federal level, you're making a decision for everybody in all 50 states. Of course, I would do what I can to help folks be able to afford housing. Interest rates obviously play a very important part in folks being able to afford housing. Also, availability is very important. There are some areas where we're just not building houses for people to buy, and so when the demand is higher than the supply, prices are high. We do currently have opportunities that help folks buy houses, and we need more of those opportunities. For example, my daughter, when she was in college, rather than paying for a dormitory, if you are living in a house that you also allow renters to live in, you can buy a house with 5% down instead of 20%. And when you're a first-time buyer, you get a lot of extra discounts. And if you make automatic payments, you can get extra discounts. I absolutely support finding programs like that that would help Wisconsin as well as the other 49 states, because that's the American dream. It's part of it that you have your own home. People should be able to afford homes, and I fully support legislation that would help do that. We already have some pretty terrific programs. It's not enough, obviously. My understanding is the most recent statistic is that right now, Our young people are anticipating that they won't be able to purchase a home until they're 30 or 40 years old. You know, they're having families by then. It is important and imperative that we help our next generation so that they take care of us when they're in power, and we're counting on them to make good decisions for us. So absolutely, I would do what I can to help folks be able to afford homes. Who was next? I'm sorry. Was it, which one? Okay.
Thanks, Ginger. Okay, being a lifelong forester, I can't resist going back to the last question. Forgive me on that one. I just want to call out that our Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest is one of the most productive forests in the nation in timber production. But you all probably just read the mill in Mosinee is closing. The mill in Wisconsin Rapids closed 2 years ago. We don't have a supply problem. We have a demand problem. We don't need to pump more wood into a market that isn't absorbing it. What we need are investments in the kind of facilities that will use our wood. That's the secret to our healthy forests. So with regard to housing, I completely agree. It's a crisis in so many small rural communities. People can't attract teachers, middle-class jobs, healthcare workers, workers in county government, workers in state and federal government, can't find a place to live for them and their families. We need a federal government that's making investments available, that's creating incentives for developers, meaningful incentives for developers to want to build affordable housing. We need to be investing in the technology for better manufactured housing so we can actually get the cost of getting a family supporting house on the ground to be a lot cheaper than it is today. And then we need state and local governments to play a role in looking at our zoning laws and allowing mixed-use developments and getting away from the single-family zoning rules that are just a handcuff on the ability to have an intelligent future development for so many communities. But federal government's got a big role to play there. It is a crisis.
The next question is for Fred and Chris. It's on the VA. Some veterans here drive hours for specialty care. Will you fight to bring more VA care closer to northern Wisconsin, even if it means pushing federal agencies hard?
Absolutely. I mean, you all probably read in the slew of bad news coming out of Washington how many people have left the Veterans Administration in the last year. And so many of those people were healthcare providers. So we are moving in the wrong direction when it comes to providing services to our veterans that they have earned and that they deserve. There shouldn't be any larger priority for us as we think about what we owe people who've served. Yeah, we have to push agencies hard, but what we really need to do is push Congress hard to appropriate the money to hire the people and build the facilities that they need so that you're not driving for hours to get basic care. That again, as we have pointed out, in the wealthiest country in the world, there is no excuse for that kind of failure.
And again, this is tied up obviously in healthcare as well, but of course one of the proposals that I think is, kind of makes sense at first glance, but really doesn't make sense in practice is, the outsourcing of VA to private healthcare. Well, you got to have private healthcare facilities for that to possibly work, and those are already taxed. So like we've talked about a lot of things up here in northern Wisconsin, there needs to be investments made that only the federal government can do. It should not be a state requirement. It should not be a local requirement. To fund, again, to attract the doctors, to have the kind of facilities. I have not served. My dad, was in the Air Force in Vietnam, led to him become a commercial airline pilot, which certainly worked out well for my lifestyle. But the buck has been passed around so long. I just don't see, I know it's expensive, but the people that have made this sacrifice for our country, it just disturbs me so much that they can't get the health care that they need. The homelessness related to that, mental health, addiction. It's just disgusting. And we're seeing it again, with this, illegal war that's going on again. So there's absolutely no doubt that the federal government needs to make the kind of investments so that the veterans that live here have access to the care that they need without having to, drive, hours and hours and hours. It's pretty common sense, I think.
The next question is to Chris and Ginger, and it's on reproductive rights. Should federal law protect abortion access nationwide, leave it to states, or restrict it? What bill would you vote for? Chris speaks first.
Absolutely. I mean, abortion care is reproductive health care, right? And of course, I find it, as I'm sure many of the women here do, find it incredibly ironic that a bunch of men, I'll admit, one of them, are making decisions that they have no idea about and they could apparently give a crap about as it relates to, the health care that women need. It is disturbing the way that this issue has divided this country for so many years. This is a decision between a woman and their family and their doctor, and the government at any level has just absolutely no business getting into the middle of this.
Ironic that a man got to answer that first.
Right?
I unapologetically support every aspect of healthcare for women. I am a mother, and I'm very glad that my husband and I were able to make all the medical decisions that needed to be made, even those that left me on bed rest. That was a very scary time in my first pregnancy. We trusted our doctors. It is not for a legislator to have any input in what we do with our bodies, what families do as far as the choice to have children or not to have children. My daughters right now are of the opinion they don't want to have children until they see a better world to bring children into. I have one child who's at least considering maybe adoption to take care of a child that was brought into the world and isn't getting the care that they deserve. I have spent my career, 30 years, representing the best interest of children. I will continue to do so when I earn your vote to go to Congress. And you can bet I'm going to support women's health, whatever component it is, and taking care of children in any and every way, including not allowing offenders of women and children to go without accountability, even if you're the President of the United States.
Unfortunately, this will be our last question. It goes to Ginger and Fred, and it's on agriculture. In the next farm bill, will you prioritize small Wisconsin dairy farms over large corporate agricultural operations? And it goes to Fred first.
Well, it's a great question because agriculture, of course, is one of the identities of Wisconsin. I think it's worth keeping in mind that a lot of the large farms that we consider corporate farms today are just family farms that got big. And a lot of them did that because of the relentless economic pressure that was not their fault, but resulted from crappy ag policies and the ability of agribusiness corporations to make all the money, while farmers were the ones who always got squeezed. So the system we have today lands right back in Washington for policies that just rewarded growth at all cost. We can move the needle back, and there will be a lot of benefits to that. It means we'll need to change some aspects of our farm commodity system. It means we need to provide incentives for producing a wider diversity of crops. And there is so much benefit that could be gained by diversifying the way we grow crops, including grass-based agriculture, that allows a 30-year-old with a little bit of money to actually get into farming that they could never afford to do with conventional dairying or conventional agriculture today. So we're going to see a ton of benefits if we can actually diversify our farm system. It'll lead to more people being able to farm, healthier food for all of us, and a strong ag sector, and clean water and clean air, which is what we all want to see. It's a thorny issue, but at bottom, I think it's one of the things that every single Wisconsinite fundamentally believes, that we ought to have a farm culture and a farm economy that works for all of us.
Farmers are the back of this country. They are the way that we put healthy food on our table. When I was an undergrad in Madison and I was taking the upper level economics classes, we learned about monopolies and oligopolies. And at this point in time, the larger farms have such an advantage because of the equipment that they have and the resources that they have. It's a little bit like, actually, politicians. Once you're in office, you get to campaign the whole time, and so you're better suited to protect your seat. For those farmers who have that really expensive equipment, they won't even sell it because they don't want someone to be able to get it at a used price. So it needs, frankly, I think it's suspect to some kind of major lawsuit for what's happening without having the ability to be subsidized the way farms traditionally were subsidized, because the capital is so expensive that mom and pop farmers can't compete. And so they do need help, and we benefit from that. And the federal government should help, but also, folks, we all have the ability to help with that by purchasing from our local farmers. And I'll tell you, once again, our indigenous folks are ahead of us. What they do with rice and other plants and what they do with their bison, we have a lot to learn, and it is a responsibility of the federal government to make sure that farmers can be in business. They are they are easily subjected to one act of God, a storm, a flood, just decimating their crop for a season. And so they deserve our support. Also, there needs to be some sort of regulation that allows for folks who are wanting to be able to level it up, to be able to afford to do so, so that we don't just have a few of those basic corporate farms, however they got there, interfering with the entrance for new startup farms. Because just like the doctors and the lawyers, the same is true for the farmers and the auto mechanics and whatever trade you're in. When you have folks who've been working there and they retire, we need space for the next generation to fill that gap and to be able to afford to start their own businesses. And specifically in farming, there needs to be governmental subsidies to help with that. One thing we haven't talked about is, for all the things where we give money, you have to figure out where to get that. And I know none of us want that to be our taxes, so that's also part of it. You have to get everybody at the table to figure out where's the money coming from to be able to support those programs. And that's it. I was really short on a lot of my other answers.
Okay, we're going to have closing statements from our candidates, and we're going to do them in the order that we followed. By the way, feel free to applaud the candidates after they speak this time. I know you've been holding back. It's been killing you, so now's your turn to shine. Okay, the first one will be Fred, then Chris, and then Ginger.
Thanks, Pat. You know, I suspect, like every one of you, I have watched for the last 13 and a half months this administration roll out terrible decision after terrible decision after terrible decision in a way that has touched the life of just about every single person in this country in one way or another. And you all know the 7th Congressional District. You all know that this has been a very strong Republican-leaning district for the last 15 years, and the three of us are up here running as Democrats. But the thing that I am absolutely certain of, because I'm having conversations with people throughout this district every day that I can, is that people are being affected to the degree that they're reevaluating their politics. Not everybody, but enough. There's so many people I've talked to who have lost their Affordable Care Act coverage because they can't afford the new premiums that have resulted from loss of those tax credits. There's so many business owners I've talked to who are growing crops or depending on export markets in Canada, who are importing retail goods for their store on Main Street, who are being screwed by these unpredictable, chaotic tariffs that's almost like spinning a roulette wheel of a national sales tax every day. All of that is being paid for by Americans. And what the world has witnessed and what we've all witnessed over in neighboring Minnesota in the last 3 months is a stain on America. And there are enough people out there who may have voted Republican in the past, but realize that they didn't vote for this. And so we have an opportunity this year. And the opportunity is to make a case for better, responsible representation that's going to balance the damage that's been done by this administration over the last year plus. I'm making the case that I've done this work before. I've served 3 terms in the Wisconsin State Assembly representing a very mixed region where I learned that you have to go to work for everybody. It means you have to show up, you have to engage with people who don't agree with you with respect, you need to listen to everybody, and you need to make a commitment that when somebody comes to you for something that they need from you as an elected representative, it's your responsibility to work just as hard for them, whether they voted for you or not. And that's the ethic and that's the message I would like to bring to representing all of you in Congress next year. I'd be thrilled to do it. I'd love to have your support. We have got to win this thing because America, in our 250th anniversary, deserves to be back toward the democracy that we were founded to be. Thank you.
So we've been facing an existential crisis for some time, as we all know. The Republicans in Congress, I don't even know what they're doing there. I mean, why do you get elected to Congress just to do nothing? Well, I mean, I guess, this is the most unproductive Congress ever, right? Mike Johnson is just completely irresponsible. One of the things that I've been hearing going across the district is that a lot of people are also very frustrated with the National Democrats as well and not stepping up and fighting back. And that's really been a big part of my story. I certainly can't claim that when I started again protesting by myself as a cathartic performative action a year ago, that trajectory would lead me here amongst my honored competitors. In some way, what we're faced with and the solution to it is very simple, and it's really important for us to keep our eye on the prize. As we often hear people say, I will gladly reach across the aisle to work with my colleagues on the other side on common sense bipartisan legislation that is for the benefit of the American public. And I would do that, but there is one non-negotiable prerequisite. You have to help us stop the criming. What is the point of passing any new legislation when this administration ignores the Constitution and ignores the law? Look what's happening in Minnesota. They are illegally withholding Medicaid funding because they don't like Tim Walz. What's going to happen here in Wisconsin when the Democrats take the governor's office? We flip the legislator to Democrats. We are going to be right in the frickin' crosshairs. And then we have this insane, illegal war that's going on. And you hear the Democrats going, well, they needed to brief us. They need to tell us their story. No, they don't. It's illegal. And there's a simple solution to it. Donald Trump must be removed from office. There is no if, and, or buts about that. It takes a lot of courage. A lot of people say, but it's going to be hard and we might not win. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean we don't do it. right? I mean, the Packers, when frickin', Tucker Kraft went down, did we go, oh, crap, well, we just got to give up, man? And then when Micah Parsons went down, did we go, well, we're just going to forfeit the rest of the games because there's no point in it. Now, it turns out we didn't win a lot of the games, but the whole point is there is a constitutional measure to this, and there's a real three-point plan I got in mind. The Dems take the House and the Senate. We go talk to our Republican colleagues that have been elected, should there be any remaining, and we say, you need to go, all right, I'll finish it up in comments afterwards.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for Northern Indivisible for hosting this event. Thank you to Fred and Chris for the lively interactions today. And most of all, thank all of you for coming here after likely a long day of work and some commute over here. I appreciate the folks who are here representing educators, folks who are here representing forestry, federal government, the legal field, and the face of the 7th District that I hope to represent in Washington, D.C. We are in unprecedented times. While I very much enjoy going around the district to talk to folks about affordable access to quality health care, earning a wage that allows you to put food on the table and own the roof over your head, while I enjoy talking about the support I will give to health care, to women's reproductive rights, to taking care of our environment, to helping the people in this district, there's also this immediate thing that demands attention, which is called the current administration. Our war in Iran was unprovoked, unnecessary, and unconstitutional. The folks I'm looking to are, many of them, in the minority. I am loving my lady lawyers who are out there pulling out the words that people are supposed to follow. I brought this for you. I hope that you'll stop at the table and take them. It is important that when we have these conversations, we don't have to rely on TikTok or nighttime comedians to know what the rules are that your elected officials are supposed to follow. I know that there have been times when folks have said the last thing we need in Congress is one more lawyer. I am a special prosecutor, a public defender, a family court commissioner from Oneida and Forest County. I represent families, parents, the best interest of children. I'm not some corporate attorney who's looking out for greed or to make a name for myself. I am offering my 30 years of advocacy for my clients or sitting on the bench taking care of families to go to Washington, D.C. to put an end to representatives, elected officials violating the Constitution, the foundation of our democracy. I will not sit quiet. I am not a bystander. I am an upstander, and I want a world where my girls are willing to bring children into the world.
We'd like to thank all of the candidates and all the community for coming in today. I'd like to apologize for those of you where we didn't get to your questions. It was pretty packed. We had some wonderful questions. If you enjoyed this program, please consider making a donation. There's a donation basket in the back, and the candidates will be staying around after the program so you can get a chance to actually speak with them one-on-one. Once again, thank you so much for coming.